Have you ever noticed how the moment you start making real changes in your life, the air around you shifts? It is almost invisible at first. You're making small adjustments, perhaps choosing healthier routines, or maybe you're speaking a little more kindly to yourself, or even setting gentle limits on the things you will and will not accept anymore. To you, these are quiet victories. They feel like signs that you are finally taking care of yourself, that you are finally stepping into a better rhythm. But to others, these changes can feel strangely unsettling. It often begins in subtle ways. You might share a small accomplishment, something you're proud of, and instead of being met with genuine excitement, you're met with a pause, a lukewarm response, or a quick shift in conversation. You notice a certain tone in their voice that wasn't there before. Sometimes they say very little at all, and that silence speaks louder than words. You start to sense that what feels freeing to you is somehow uncomfortable for them. And here is the part that can be confusing. You never intended for your growth to bother anyone. You are not trying to prove anything. You are not trying to compete or to show off. You are simply trying to become a healthier, more grounded version of yourself. Yet, even with the best intentions, your healing has a way of touching the people around you, and not everyone knows how to handle it. It can leave you wondering if you're imagining things. Was that comment harmless? Or was it laced with something more? Did they really mean it the way it sounded? Or am I just being too sensitive? Why does it feel like they are withdrawing the more I grow? These are the questions that quietly circle in your mind when you notice these subtle shifts. The truth is, growth has a ripple effect. When you begin to change, it does not happen in isolation. The people who have been used to one version of you suddenly have to face another version, one that may no longer fit the roles, expectations, or patterns they were comfortable with. That change can feel threatening, even if you never meant it to be. Think about it this way. Imagine you have been walking beside someone for years, keeping pace, moving in step. Then one day, without any announcement, you begin to pick up speed. You start walking with more purpose, maybe even moving in a new direction. For you, it feels natural, necessary, maybe even exciting. But for the person beside you, it can feel confusing and uncomfortable. They might feel left behind. They might feel exposed. They might even start questioning why they're not walking differently too. And instead of saying, I feel unsettled watching you grow, what often comes out is something quieter and harder to name. A slight pulling away, a subtle dismissiveness, a shadow of unspoken jealousy. This can be one of the hardest parts of healing because it is not about obvious conflict. It is not about loud arguments or clear disagreements. It is about the undercurrent, the feeling that someone is not as happy for you as you hoped they would be, that your progress makes them uncomfortable in ways they cannot or will not put into words. And if you're not careful, these moments can cause you to second-guess yourself. You may start to dim your progress just a little, keeping it to yourself so you do not stir up the silence or discomfort again. You may even shrink back into familiar patterns, telling yourself it is easier to stay the same than to feel this quiet resistance. But deep down, you know that shrinking does not feel right. You know that growth, once it begins, cannot truly be undone. And so the question arises, what do you do when your healing, your progress, your growth threatens someone else's comfort zone? How do you move forward when your light makes others uneasy? How do you continue expanding without carrying the weight of their unspoken jealousy? That is what we are exploring together today. Not from a place of blame, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of gentle understanding. Because the more you understand why your growth may trigger discomfort in others, the less you will take it personally, and the more you can stay rooted in your path without apology. So let us sit with this together. Let us unfold why this happens, what it really means, and most importantly, how you can face it with grace. Chapter 1. Why your growth feels threatening to others. When you begin to grow, even in the smallest of ways, you may notice that not everyone welcomes it with open arms. And that can feel confusing because growth is something to be celebrated. It takes courage to change old patterns. It takes effort to step into a new rhythm. But while you're busy honoring the progress you have made, someone else may be quietly unsettled by it. At first, you might dismiss this feeling. You might think, surely they are happy for me. Surely they can see this is good for me. But as time passes, the signals become clearer. Their tone changes, their engagement shifts, or their interest in your journey fades, and you start to sense something deeper at play. Why does this happen? Why would your growth, something positive, create discomfort for someone else? The answer often lies in what growth represents. Growth does not only change you, it changes the space around you. For someone who has known you in a certain way for a long time, your growth can feel like a disruption. They have gotten used to you showing up in familiar patterns. Maybe you used to downplay your needs. Maybe you laughed off certain things. Maybe you carried responsibilities that were not really yours to carry. And now you are beginning to move differently. You are speaking with more clarity, or you are choosing healthier routines, or you are making decisions that honor your well-being. To you, these are steps forward. To them, it feels like the ground beneath their feet is shifting. This is where the tension begins. People naturally attach themselves to comfort zones. A comfort zone is not necessarily a place of happiness, but it is a place of familiarity. It is the space where things feel predictable, even if they are not ideal. And when you step outside of that zone, it quietly challenges the people who are still inside it. Your growth becomes a reminder that change is possible, and that reminder can feel unsettling if they are not ready to face their own changes. Think of it this way. Imagine a group of people sitting together in a room where the air is heavy and the windows have been closed for a long time. Everyone has grown accustomed to breathing in that heavy air. It is what they know. Then one day, you decide to walk over and open a window. Fresh air begins to flow in. For you, it feels relieving. You can breathe more freely, but for the others in the room, that sudden change feels sharp. The cool breeze makes them shiver. It unsettles what they had adapted to. And instead of saying, "Thank you for opening the window," their first reaction might be to complain about the draft. Your growth works in a similar way. It is like opening a window where there has been none. It stirs the atmosphere. It brings in freshness. But freshness can feel like disruption to someone who has grown comfortable with the old air. This discomfort can show up in many ways. Sometimes it is withdrawal. Someone who used to engage with you regularly might pull back, speaking less or sharing less. Sometimes it is in subtle remarks that make you second-guess whether you should talk about your progress at all. Sometimes it is even in exaggerated indifference, as if they do not notice the changes you're making. None of these reactions mean that your growth is wrong. They simply mean that your growth is visible, and visibility can feel like pressure to those who are not ready to look at themselves. What often goes unseen is the mirror effect of growth. Without intending to, you hold up a mirror when you change. You reflect back to others the choices they are not making, the habits they have not broken, the courage they have not yet gathered, and not everyone wants to look in that mirror. It can feel easier for them to avoid it or to dismiss the one holding it. If you can recognize this, it softens the sting. You begin to see that their reaction is not really about you at all. It is about what your presence stirs inside them. Your growth challenges the story they have been telling themselves about what is possible. And that can feel uncomfortable. And this is where many people unknowingly begin to shrink. They sense that their progress unsettles others, and they start holding back. They stop sharing their joy. They tuck away their victories. They stay silent about the small ways they're healing, not because they want to, but because they feel guilty for making someone else uncomfortable. But here's the truth. Your growth is not a threat. It is a reminder that change is possible. A reminder that life can be lived differently. A reminder that it is never too late to shift. And while some people may resist that reminder at first, it does not mean you should silence it. So when you feel that subtle tension in the air, remember this. It is not your responsibility to keep everyone comfortable. It is your responsibility to honor the changes you're making. Because those changes matter. They are reshaping the way you live, the way you think, the way you move through the world, and no one's discomfort should outweigh your right to grow. This is why your growth can feel threatening to others. Not because you are doing anything wrong, not because you're pushing against them, but simply because you're expanding in a way they may not be ready to. And that expansion, while uncomfortable for them, is deeply necessary for you. Chapter 2. The truth about unspoken jealousy. There is a kind of jealousy that most people never name. It is not the loud, obvious kind that shows up in arguments or dramatic outbursts. It is quieter, softer, almost invisible at times. It lingers in the pauses. It hides in the silence after you share good news. It is woven into the subtle ways someone avoids talking about your progress, as though acknowledging it would cost them too much. This is the realm of unspoken jealousy, and it is one of the hardest dynamics to navigate when you are on a path of growth. When people hear the word jealousy, they often imagine something sharp and hostile, but that is not always the case. More often, jealousy is a quiet confession. It is not an attack against you. It is an expression of someone else's longing. It is their way of saying without words, I wish I could do what you're doing. I wish I had the strength to change like you have. I wish I felt as free as you do. Of course, they may never say these words aloud because speaking them would mean acknowledging a gap between where they are and where they want to be. Instead, that longing slips out in subtle ways: withdrawal, defensiveness, or disinterest. The truth is, when someone feels jealous of your healing or your growth, it is rarely about you as a person. It is about what your progress represents. Your choices, your courage, your willingness to change, all of it reminds them of the choices they have not made yet. And that reminder can sting. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that shows you not only who you are, but also who you could become if you took the steps you have been avoiding. For many people, that reflection is too much. It is easier to look away, and so, when they see you making changes, it feels as though they are being asked to confront that mirror, not by your request, but simply by your presence. This is why unspoken jealousy feels so complex. On one hand, it may seem like dislike. On the surface, it can even feel like rejection, but beneath it lies something far more tender, the pain of comparison, the discomfort of recognizing their own stuck places, and instead of seeing your growth as inspiration, they see it as a spotlight on their limitations. When you can understand this, it changes everything. Instead of internalizing their silence or their subtle resistance as a sign that you're doing something wrong, you begin to see it as a reflection of their inner struggle. You stop asking, "What did I do to make them feel this way?" And you begin to understand, this is about where they are, not about who I am. That shift is powerful because it frees you from carrying the weight of their unspoken feelings. But let us pause here because it is important to acknowledge something. Even though you may know in your mind that their jealousy is not about you, it can still hurt. It can hurt to feel unsupported. It can hurt to realize that not everyone will clap for you when you change. It can hurt to feel that your joy makes someone else uneasy. And it is okay to admit that pain. Naming it does not make you weak. It makes you human. At the same time, it helps to hold on to a larger truth. Jealousy, even unspoken, is not always rooted in malice. Sometimes it is rooted in admiration that someone does not yet know how to express. Sometimes it is rooted in their own longing, their own frustration, their own hidden hope that maybe one day they will find the courage too. They may never admit it, but in their silence, there may be a quiet acknowledgement. I see you doing what I cannot yet do. And here is where your perspective matters most. You could see their response as rejection and let it discourage you, or you could see it as proof that your growth is visible, that it is real, that it has impact beyond just yourself. You could recognize that while they may not celebrate you openly, your courage is planting seeds in their awareness. Think of it like this. Not everyone will clap when you bloom, but some will notice. And even if they say nothing, your blooming may stir something inside them. It may whisper to them that change is possible. It may remind them that they too can grow when they are ready. So the truth about unspoken jealousy is not that people secretly dislike you. It is that they are wrestling with themselves. They are wrestling with what they see in you that they have not yet found within themselves. And that wrestling is not your responsibility to fix. Your responsibility is simply to keep going, to recognize that jealousy is not a verdict against you, but a reflection of where someone else is in their journey, to honor your progress without guilt, to keep shining, even if your light makes others squint, and perhaps most importantly, to know that unspoken jealousy is often unspoken admiration in disguise. They may not say it, but deep down, your courage touches something in them. And one day, it might even be the spark that encourages them to change. So the next time you feel that quiet tension, take a breath. Remind yourself that it is not about you doing something wrong. It is about the unspoken battle inside them. And in that reminder, give yourself permission to keep growing anyway. Chapter 3. How to face this subtle dislike with grace. By the time you begin to notice the tension, by the time you sense that your growth unsettles someone, a new question naturally arises. What do you do about it? How do you keep moving forward when your progress seems to make someone else uneasy? How do you carry yourself with dignity and care when the people around you do not know how to meet you in this new space? The first truth to remember is this: you're not responsible for the way others respond to your healing. That weight does not belong to you. Of course, it is natural to feel pulled in that direction, to wonder if you should change your behavior to ease their discomfort, to consider dimming your excitement so you do not stand out too much. But every time you shrink yourself for the sake of someone else's comfort, you chip away at the very progress you have worked so hard to create. So the first step in facing subtle dislike is to stay grounded in your own path. Grounded means reminding yourself over and over again why you chose to grow in the first place. It means keeping your focus on the quiet victories you're building rather than the reactions you're receiving. It means holding your own progress with enough tenderness that you do not feel the need to apologize for it. Think of your growth like a young plant just breaking through the soil. In its earliest stages, it is delicate. It needs sunlight. It needs water. And it needs to be protected from the elements that might crush it before it has a chance to take root. In the same way, your healing needs protection. It does not need to be explained, justified, or defended. It simply needs to be honored and nurtured. The second step is to practice gentle boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are not punishments. They are simply the way you decide how much of yourself you will share and with whom. When you sense that someone cannot celebrate your growth without discomfort, it is perfectly okay to hold back parts of your journey. You do not owe every detail of your healing to every person you know. Protecting your progress does not mean closing your heart. It simply means being wise about where you place your openness. Sometimes a boundary is as simple as choosing not to bring up certain topics with someone who dismisses them. Sometimes it is creating a little space between yourself and someone who consistently drains your energy. Sometimes it is quietly deciding that you will no longer look for validation from a person who cannot offer it. Boundaries are your way of saying, I value my growth enough to keep it safe. The third step is to respond with compassion instead of defensiveness. This can be one of the hardest shifts because when you sense subtle dislike, the instinct is often to explain yourself, to prove that you're not doing anything wrong, or to try to convince the other person to see your changes positively. But here's the truth. No amount of defending or convincing will change how someone feels inside themselves. Defensiveness drains you. Compassion frees you. Compassion does not mean excusing their behavior. It does not mean tolerating hurtful remarks. It simply means recognizing that their reaction is a reflection of their own struggle, not a judgment on your worth. When you see it this way, you can let go of the need to fight back. You can choose not to take on their energy. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to say less, not more, to meet their silence with calm, to meet their unease with steadiness. And then the fourth step, surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth. It is easy to focus on the ones who do not, to get caught in the heaviness of their silence or their subtle resistance, but there are always others who will notice your progress and cheer for you without hesitation. These are the voices you need in your corner. Think of how it feels when someone's eyes light up when you share your progress. Think of how it feels when someone listens with genuine interest, when they clap for your victories, when they remind you how far you've come. These moments are like nourishment for your growth. They remind you that not everyone is unsettled by change. Some people are inspired by it. Some people are lifted by it. Some people are quietly waiting for you to show them that it is possible. So seek those spaces. Let yourself be reminded that your progress matters. Let their encouragement become the wind that carries you forward when you feel heavy. And most of all, let yourself believe that you deserve to be celebrated. Grace in this journey is about balance. It is about learning how to stay steady in the face of discomfort without closing your heart. It is about knowing when to share and when to protect. It is about choosing compassion over defensiveness and support over silence. Grace is not about making everyone comfortable. It is about walking your path with dignity, even when others do not understand. And here's the part that brings peace. You do not have to get it perfect. Facing subtle dislike with grace is not about always knowing the right words to say or always feeling strong. It is about trying. It is about choosing again and again to stay true to yourself, even when it feels hard. It is about reminding yourself that your growth is worth protecting. So the next time you sense that quiet tension, pause. Take a breath. Remember why you're growing. Remember that you do not need to shrink to keep the peace. Remember that boundaries are an act of care. Remember that compassion protects your energy. And remember that support exists, even if it is not coming from the person you hoped it would. This is how you face subtle dislike with grace, not by fighting, not by proving, not by apologizing, but by holding steady in your own truth, protecting your healing, and surrounding yourself with the voices that remind you your growth is something to be proud of. Chapter 4. Encouragement for your path. I want to pause here and speak directly to you, because if you are listening to this, chances are you have felt the quiet sting of someone pulling back from you as you grow. You have probably wrestled with that unsettling feeling of wondering whether your joy is too much, whether your progress is too visible, whether your healing makes others uneasy. And if you have carried those questions in silence, I want you to hear me clearly right now. Your growth is not a problem. Your healing is not a burden. The steps you're taking forward are not wrong. They are necessary, and they are worth honoring. It is so easy to forget this when you're surrounded by mixed signals. You might feel a wave of pride one moment and then a wave of guilt the next. You might share your progress and then instantly regret it when you notice the room fall quiet. You might even catch yourself holding back, not because you want to, but because you're tired of feeling that subtle resistance. But please, do not mistake their silence or their unease as a reason to stop. Your healing may make some people uncomfortable, but it will also inspire others, often in ways you cannot see. There will always be someone quietly watching, someone who is listening, someone who notices the way you carry yourself differently. They may never tell you, but you will plant seeds in them simply by being yourself. And those seeds matter. They might grow later when the time is right. Even more importantly, your growth is not meant to please others. It is meant to free you. Every time you choose not to shrink, every time you choose to protect your progress, every time you keep moving forward despite the subtle discomfort of others, you're giving yourself the gift of becoming. That gift is yours to keep. It belongs to no one else. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine yourself standing in an open field at the edge of dawn. The air is still, the ground is cool, and the sky is beginning to lighten. At first, it is only the faintest glow, but slowly the sun begins to rise. The light stretches across the horizon, reaching further and further, touching everything in its path. You are that light. Your growth is that sunrise. Some will welcome it with warmth and gratitude. Others may squint, may turn away, may long for the shadows they were used to. But whether they celebrate it or resist it, the light continues to rise. The sun does not dim itself because someone is not ready to see. It rises anyway, and so do you. Your path will not always feel easy. There will be days when you question whether it is worth it. There will be moments when you long for the simplicity of who you used to be, because at least that version did not stir up discomfort in others. But I want you to remember something very important. Comfort is not the same as fulfillment. Staying small might feel safe, but it will never feel true. And your life deserves truth more than it deserves the temporary ease of someone else's approval. So keep growing, keep healing, keep choosing the version of yourself that feels most alive. And when you feel the weight of others' unease pressing against you, come back to this reminder. You're not responsible for their comfort. You are responsible for your own becoming. It is okay if not everyone claps. It is okay if not everyone understands. It is okay if your progress unsettles old dynamics. What matters is that you keep listening to the quiet voice inside you that knows you are ready for more. That voice is guiding you somewhere meaningful. Trust it. And when you feel tired, when the silence feels heavy, when the subtle dislike weighs on your heart, pause and remember how far you have come. Remember the days when you longed for the very progress you're living in right now. Remember that what feels ordinary to you now was once a dream, once a struggle, once something you were not sure you could reach, and yet here you are. That is worth celebrating. Even if you are the only one who celebrates it, you do not need permission to rise. You do not need validation to heal. You do not need unanimous approval to grow. What you need is courage, the courage to keep stepping forward even when the path feels lonely. And that courage is already in you, or you would not be here listening today. So let this be your encouragement. You are not behind. You are not wrong for wanting more. You're not selfish for protecting your progress. You're not unworthy because others cannot celebrate you. You are enough, exactly as you are becoming, and the light you are stepping into is yours to keep. Do not dim it to ease someone else's shadows. Do not hide it to protect their comfort. Rise anyway. Shine anyway. Grow anyway. Because your path is sacred in its own right, not because of who notices it, but because it belongs to you. And if ever you forget, return here. Let these words remind you that your healing is not a threat. It is a gift. A gift for yourself and perhaps one day, quietly, a gift for others too. Chapter 5. Learning not to shrink yourself. One of the most common responses to subtle dislike or unspoken jealousy is the quiet urge to shrink. You might notice yourself speaking less about your progress. You might downplay your achievements or soften your joy so that it does not feel too much. You might even catch yourself stepping back into old habits, not because you want to, but because it feels safer to blend in. This shrinking is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is so subtle you do not even realize you're doing it. But over time, it leaves you carrying the weight of other people's comfort while sacrificing your own freedom. Shrinking yourself often begins with good intentions. You want to keep the peace. You do not want to make anyone feel left out. You do not want to stir up tension or seem like you are boasting. But what starts as consideration can quietly turn into self-betrayal. Every time you silence your joy, every time you minimize your progress, every time you tuck away the parts of yourself that feel too bright, you teach yourself that your growth is only acceptable if it does not disturb anyone else. The truth is, you were not meant to live in half-light. You were not meant to dim yourself so that others feel more at ease. Your growth deserves room to breathe. It deserves space to stretch and expand. And while it is natural to want harmony with others, you cannot sacrifice your own becoming in exchange for their comfort. That trade is too costly. Think of it this way. Imagine a flower blooming in the spring. It has spent months hidden beneath the soil, gathering strength, surviving through the cold. And when the season is right, it begins to open, the petals spread, the colors deepen, the fragrance rises. Now imagine if that flower suddenly decided to close itself again because it noticed another plant nearby was not blooming yet. Imagine if it said, "I will hold myself back until everyone else is ready too." It would withhold its beauty. It would silence the very expression of its life, and it would miss its own season of becoming. In many ways, that is what shrinking yourself does. You hold yourself back for the sake of others, but in the process, you miss out on the fullness of your own growth. And the truth is, your blooming does not harm anyone. It does not take away from what others can become. If anything, it creates possibility. It shows that change is real, that life can move in new directions, that there is more waiting beyond the familiar. Learning not to shrink yourself begins with awareness. Notice the moments when you catch yourself softening your excitement or withholding your progress. Ask yourself gently, am I doing this to be kind, or am I doing this to hide? If the answer is to hide, then that is your invitation to pause and realign, because kindness is beautiful, but hiding is costly. The next step is practice, allowing yourself to take up space in small ways. Share your joy with people who can hold it. Speak about your progress without immediately minimizing it. Let yourself stand a little taller, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. This does not mean forcing yourself into the spotlight. It simply means not stepping back into the shadows when you belong in the light. And perhaps the most important step is to remember that your growth is not too much. It may feel like too much for someone who is not ready to see it, but that is not the same thing. Too much for them does not mean too much in truth. You are not excessive. You are expanding, and expansion is natural, necessary, and right. So the next time you feel that urge to shrink, remind yourself, you have earned this growth. You have worked for it, struggled for it, longed for it. You do not need to make yourself small in order to belong. The right spaces, the right people, the right moments will make room for you. And until then, hold yourself with the dignity you deserve. Do not shrink to fit the comfort of others. Grow to fit the fullness of yourself. Chapter 6. Sitting with loneliness and growth. There is a part of growth that few people prepare you for. It is not the excitement of change. It is not the energy of transformation. It is the quiet, heavy stretch of loneliness that sometimes follows when you begin to move into a new season of your life. You may not expect it at first. When you take steps toward healing, you often imagine more connection, more joy, more belonging, and those things do come in time. But what also comes, sometimes in the early stages, is a gap. The gap between who you used to be and who you are becoming. The gap between the spaces that once felt familiar and the ones you have not yet found. The gap between people who understood your past self and the people who will understand your present self. That gap can feel like loneliness, and it can be disorienting. Loneliness in growth does not always mean you are without people. You may still be surrounded by family, friends, or colleagues, but there is a certain kind of solitude that comes from realizing that not everyone can walk this part of the journey with you. You may feel a distance growing, not because you pushed anyone away, but because you are stepping into a rhythm that no longer matches theirs. And when the rhythm changes, so does the closeness. This is where many people struggle. The silence of loneliness can feel like proof that something is wrong. It can whisper to you that maybe you should go back, that maybe the comfort of belonging, even in a version of yourself that felt too small, would be easier than walking alone for a while. It can tempt you into shrinking, just so you can feel that closeness again. But here is the truth. Loneliness and growth is not a sign you are wrong. It is a sign you are in transition. It is the in-between space, the threshold where the old has loosened, but the new has not fully arrived. And while that space can feel uncomfortable, it is also one of the most important parts of your becoming. Think of a seed planted in the soil. For a long time, it grows in silence. Hidden beneath the surface, it is isolated in the dark. No one sees the progress. No one celebrates the stretching roots. No one claps for the small movements beneath the earth. And yet, that loneliness is necessary. Without that season of hidden growth, the seed would never have the strength to break through the soil and reach the light. In the same way, your loneliness is not wasted. It is not empty. It is the space where you gather strength, where you learn to hold yourself, where you become steady enough to step into the new life that is waiting. Sitting with loneliness does not mean you have to like it. It does not mean you will never wish for company. It simply means learning to soften into it rather than fight against it. It means reminding yourself that this season will not last forever. It means recognizing that solitude can be a companion, not a punishment. You may find comfort in small rituals, quiet walks, journaling, listening to words that steady your heart, creating spaces that feel safe and nurturing. These are ways of reminding yourself that you're not abandoned in your growth. You are simply in the process of realignment. And here is the gentle promise. New connections will come. As you grow, you will meet people who resonate with the version of you that is unfolding. They may arrive slowly, but they will arrive. And when they do, the connections will feel different, lighter, deeper, truer, because they are built on who you are becoming, not on who you used to be. Until then, let your loneliness be a teacher. Let it show you the depth of your own resilience. Let it remind you that even in the quietest seasons, you are still growing. And let it strengthen your trust that this path, even when it feels lonely, is leading you somewhere meaningful. So if you find yourself sitting in loneliness right now, know that you are not broken. You are simply in the space between. And that space, while quiet, is preparing you for the connections, the belonging, and the freedom that are yet to come. You can sit with it. You can breathe through it. You can allow it to shape you without letting it define you. Loneliness and growth is not the end of your story. It is simply one of its most tender chapters. Chapter 7. The Hidden Challenges of Growth. When people talk about healing or growth, the story is often told in highlights, the fresh routines, the new boundaries, the moments of joy where you finally feel lighter. And yes, those moments are real. But what's not always spoken about are the challenges that sit quietly behind them. The hidden weight that comes with changing yourself in ways the world around you may not yet understand. One of the first challenges is uncertainty. Growth does not always give you a clear roadmap. You may sense that something needs to shift, but you do not always know what the next step will be. You may feel caught between two places, unable to go back to what you were, yet unsure of what you are becoming. That uncertainty can feel heavy, almost like walking through fog. You take a step forward, not knowing if the ground will be steady, but you take it anyway. That in itself is a challenge and a quiet act of courage. Another challenge is the loss of ease in familiar spaces. The places, habits, and conversations that once felt natural may suddenly feel heavy or misaligned. You may find yourself sitting in rooms that used to feel comfortable, now sensing a quiet distance, as though you no longer belong in the same way. It is disorienting to feel like a stranger in spaces that once felt like home. That disorientation is one of growth's hardest companions. There is also the challenge of misunderstanding. As you change, people may misinterpret your choices. They may see your boundaries as rejection, your silence as pride, your self-care as selfishness. Even if those interpretations are untrue, hearing them can sting. It can make you want to explain yourself endlessly to prove that your growth is not an attack. But often, explanations do little to change how others see things. And so you learn to carry the weight of being misunderstood, which is never easy. Another challenge lies within yourself. Growth requires you to face your own resistance. Old habits tug at you. Familiar patterns call you back. The mind whispers, "Wasn't it easier before?" And sometimes you listen. Sometimes you step back into old rhythms not because you want to, but because they feel safe in their familiarity. That tension, the tug between who you were and who you are becoming, is perhaps the most personal challenge of all. And then there is exhaustion. Growth is not just emotional, it is physical. It asks for energy, attention, patience. It requires you to hold space for new ways of living while letting go of old ways that once defined you. Some days it feels empowering. Other days it feels like work. And on those days it is easy to wonder if the effort is worth it. But here is what is important to remember. The challenges of growth are not signs that you are failing. They are signs that you are in the process. Just like a muscle that shakes when it is being strengthened, the discomfort is proof of transformation. The struggle is not evidence that you are weak. It is evidence that you are stretching into something larger than before, and within each challenge, there is a hidden gift. Uncertainty teaches you trust. Loss of ease teaches you discernment. Misunderstanding teaches you resilience. Internal resistance teaches you persistence. Exhaustion teaches you rest. These lessons are not always pleasant, but they are essential threads in the fabric of your becoming. So if you are facing these challenges right now, know that you are not alone. Everyone who chooses to grow encounters them in some form. The road is not smooth, but it is meaningful. And each challenge, while heavy, is shaping you into someone steadier, someone clearer, someone more aligned with the life you long for. Growth is not always easy. It can stir discomfort in others. It can bring unspoken jealousy. It can challenge you with loneliness, misunderstanding, and the quiet weight of change. But within all of this, there is something steady and unshakable. You're becoming more yourself. Every chapter of this journey, both the tender and the triumphant, is shaping you into someone who carries more clarity, more freedom, and more strength. You do not need to shrink to fit the comfort of others. You do not need to rush through the loneliness or fight against the challenges. You are allowed to move at your own pace, to hold your progress with quiet confidence, and to trust that each step forward is meaningful. This path is yours. And though it may feel heavy at times, it is also beautiful. It is proof that you're willing to grow, even when it costs you comfort, even when it shifts the world around you. That willingness is rare. That willingness is powerful. Thank you so much for being here. If these reflections spoke to you, I'd love for you to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. Until next time, take good care of yourself and keep choosing what brings you peace.